When you first lay your eyes on the Tasco, you don't just see a car, you see a question, a strange one. Something like, was this designed for the road or accidentally left behind by an aircraft engineer? Because let's be honest, this thing doesn't look like anything else from its time. In 1948, when most cars were still figuring out how to look modern after the war, this one showed up like it had already skipped 20 years into the future and maybe borrowed a few ideas from a fighter plane along the way. The story begins with a man who absolutely knew what he was doing, Gordon Buehrig, not some random dreamer, but the same designer behind legends like the Cord 810 and Auburn Speedster. So when he decided to create something new, people paid attention. The idea was simple on paper: build an American sports car that could compete with European machines. But in reality, what came out was something far more experimental. The Tasco, short for the American Sports Car Company, wasn't just a car. It was a rolling concept of what the future could look like, even if nobody was quite ready for it yet. Underneath that wild, almost alien-looking body was actually something surprisingly familiar. The car was built on a modified 1947 Mercury chassis, heavily reworked but still rooted in production hardware. And here's where it gets interesting: the engine. The Tasco used a 239 cubic inch flathead V8, originally from Mercury, but in some versions enhanced with Ardent heads, pushing output up to around 150 horsepower. Now, 150 horsepower today doesn't sound like much, but in 1948, in a lightweight aerodynamic body, that was more than enough to make things exciting. Not terrifying, not race car insane, but definitely quick enough to make you feel like you were piloting something special. And honestly, with that cockpit-style design, you probably felt like a pilot anyway. Power was sent to the rear wheels through a 3-speed manual transmission mounted on the steering column, classic for the era. Nothing overly complicated here. The complexity was saved for everything else. Now let's talk about something that really makes this car stand out: how it turns. Because at first glance, you might think, wait, how do those front wheels even move? And that's a fair question. The answer is actually brilliant. The front wheels were partially covered by separate fiberglass fenders that turned together with the wheels themselves. So instead of the wheels turning inside fixed arches like on a normal car, the entire fender sections moved along with them. It's one of those ideas that looks futuristic, works surprisingly well, but also makes you wonder what happens the first time you hit mud, snow, or a bad road. Let's just say it was probably better suited for smooth pavement than Ukrainian back roads. The steering itself was mechanical and fairly direct for its time, but the experience wasn't just about turning, it was about feeling. With the long hood stretching out in front of you and those unusual wheel housings moving as you steer, the whole driving experience must have felt completely different from anything else on the road. And then there's the design. This car didn't just borrow inspiration from airplanes, it practically committed to the idea. The cockpit was enclosed like a canopy, visibility was wide and panoramic, and the controls were arranged in a way that resembled an aircraft dashboard. Switches, levers, gauges, everything had that aviation vibe. You weren't just driving, you were operating something. And the roof? That's where things get truly historic. The Tasco became the first car in the world to feature a T-top roof, removable panels above the driver and passenger that could be taken off to create an open-air experience.
Yes, decades before it became cool on Corvettes, this weird experimental machine had already done it. Buehrig even patented the design in 1951, and later, when Chevrolet used a similar idea, he actually sued them. Imagine inventing something ahead of its time and then watching someone else make it famous years later. That's gotta hurt just a little. The body itself was constructed mostly from aluminum with some fiberglass elements, another forward-thinking decision. Lightweight materials, aerodynamic shape, and those enclosed wheels all pointed toward efficiency and speed. Even the rear of the car tapered like an aircraft fuselage, complete with a plexiglass section covering the tail lights. And yet, despite all of this innovation, the Tasco never went into production. Only one was ever built. Why? Well, part of the answer is simple: cost. The prototype reportedly cost the equivalent of hundreds of thousands of dollars in today's money. The other part is more complicated. The design was just too far ahead, too unusual, too risky. People in 1948 weren't necessarily ready to buy something that looked like it belonged in a science fiction movie. Even Buehrig himself later joked about it, calling the car my Edsel. Not exactly a compliment. But here's the funny thing. Today, this car doesn't look like a failure. It looks like a vision, something bold, experimental, slightly strange, but undeniably creative. The kind of car that makes you stop and stare, even if you're not sure whether you love it or not. And maybe that's exactly the point. Because cars like the Tasco weren't built to sell thousands of units. They were built to explore ideas, to test boundaries, to ask questions like, what if we tried this? And sometimes those ideas don't work immediately. Sometimes they come back decades later in a completely different form. So yeah, maybe it wasn't a commercial success, but it didn't need to be, because in its own strange, slightly awkward, airplane-inspired way, it quietly influenced the future. If you enjoy rare, experimental, and slightly what-were-they-thinking vehicles like this one, subscribe. Because trust me, this isn't even close to the weirdest thing out there.